Todd Bowles said that he won't pass on more weapons on offense for the sake of taking defensive players. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, joined by David Shealy at Deacon_Shealy on Twitter. We are your credentialed members of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, David is over at 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. And I am here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. For that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, David, I lost you there for a second, but you're back looking snazzy. We are ready to roll here, and we are going to be finding out what David thinks the best fits for the Bucs are in the first round and his thoughts on all of that cap room that the Bucs cleared up, what that might be going towards. That's all coming up a little bit later, but I wanted to start this one off with an interesting quote from Todd Bowles from the owners' meetings last week. So on the show, I've been pretty adamant that the Bucs are going to have a defensive-heavy draft. I would be surprised if they didn't go with defensive players with all of their picks in the first 2 days, but maybe I'm way off base. And the Bucs would be willing to draft offense as early as the first round. Bowles was asked about their strategy heading into the draft, and he said, quote, "Being a defensive coach, I learned that you win by scoring points. I don't ever want to bypass a very good offensive player. I can figure things out enough on defense to keep us competitive. I would like to have some defensive players if that presented itself, but by no means will I bypass a very good offensive player just to satisfy my needs on defense. We can figure out how to keep the score down, but you can't figure out a way to keep scoring points, especially if your horses go down. You can never have enough horses on offense, but yes, I'd like to add some pieces on defense if that's what you're asking me, but whether they come in the first round or whether they come in the middle rounds remains to be seen," end quote. So David, is this Bowles kind of blowing smoke and trying to ensure that other teams think that they would be willing to pull the trigger on a receiver or even a tight end or a running back if Tyler Warren or Ashton Genty fall to them at 19? To maybe orchestrate a trade down with a team with more offensive needs? Or do you think the Bucs would legitimately consider going with an offensive player at pick 19?
Yeah, so I don't know if he's talking specifically about pick 19. He might be talking about maybe later in the draft, because you can still find value in later rounds. Like you don't have to rely on, just round one, right? I think what he's doing now, you got to understand, part of your draft strategy is having to kind of blow smoke and lie. That is part of that is part of the draft strategy. But we got to keep in mind that it is true that you cannot have enough horses on offense. Look at that 2020 Bucs team. How many horses did they have? I mean, my goodness, right? That team was stacked. So when you have that much talent on offense, yes, you can keep scoring points, and then you just tell your defense, all right, let's figure out how to make sure they don't score as much as we just did, right? So I totally understand that. I think people who got a little bit upset about that, like, I can't believe you would consider offense over defense. Well, my mind immediately went to, well, isn't that kind of what the Bucs did when they drafted Bucky Irving? Because you just had Rachaad White come 10 yards shy of 1,000, right? So you figured you have a running back who, by the way, almost had 1,000 yards in the league's worst rushing offense. So you would think you have a guy, but they saw so much value in Bucky, which we definitely see now. I see it now, right? So I see the value that Bucky brings. They saw it before we did. That's why they make the millions of dollars and we don't. And they decided, let's go get this running back out of Oregon and not go with a defensive guy, even though they did take care of their defense, like the Tyke Smith pick, genius. But yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. Like, we're not going to pass up on a guy that we value higher than our next defensive guy. There's no need to stretch or reach, is the draft term, for a defensive guy simply because, well, we needed a defensive guy. When you see somebody like, hey, this guy can work out, which we just saw, again, my example being Bucky Irving.
Yeah, and I think when you take a look at the offense, I can see the Bucs drafting wide receiver for sure. Trey Palmer, he's not really the guy that I think a lot of people believed he would become. So once you get past Sterling Shepard there on the depth chart, there's a void. And we saw what happened when Mike went down and Chris went down for a month last year. And you're relying on Sterling Shepard, and then Jalen McMillan's in and out of the lineup with injury. He emerged, obviously, so he's a great number 3. But you take a look at the receiver position as being one that the Bucs could potentially address, and there's some great guys, like you mentioned, kind of in the beginning of day 3 in those middle rounds. Running back, that's another one. They just had, as you mentioned, they bring in Bucky Irving after Rachaad White nearly gets 1,000 yards, but beyond that, you have Sean Tucker, and that's it. Like, they didn't have Chase Edmonds last year. That running back room in that depth is pretty shallow. So that's another position where I could see them going. But I don't know. I've seen a couple of mock drafts, David, where they have the Bucs taking tight ends. And that one, to me, I'm like, they're good. You have Otten, you have Durham, you have Culp, who emerged late in the year. You still have Kokeeft. Offensively, where would you see the Bucs going in terms of the draft and what positions they would address?
Yeah, for dang sure ain't tight end, because you've got you everybody you just named is still on their rookie contract.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason to go tight end. If you are going to go with somebody, I think you're going to have to go with receiver, because look, receivers, they have little issues. Like Mike Evans, he's due for a hamstring every year. Do we know when? No. But he's due for a hamstring every year. There's other little, things that kind of pop up, even with some of the depth guys. We saw it happen with Cameron Johnson as well. So, like, you have things that pop up. You can never have enough pass catchers on the outside, guys who can line up outside the numbers. They understand the system. They understand the route tree. They know how to get open. Those are so valuable. Depth at wide receiver is so valuable. And again, you brought up like Sterling Shepard and Jalen McMillan, right? We saw that they had to deal with some things. Trey Palmer isn't really the guy that people thought he was going to be after, he was wide receiver 3 in his rookie season. What shape will Chris Godwin be, right, after his injury? You can never have enough. If you're going to go with any position on offense, I don't think it should be first round. I'm going to say it again. I don't think it should be first round. But if you're going to go with any position, wide receiver is that position.
Yeah, all right. Well, I mean, you heard it right here. David Shealy says that my beloved Illinois Fighting Illini receiver, Pat Bryant, is going to be drafted by the Buccaneers.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I gave you my best fits on yesterday's show, but who does David think are the best guys for the Bucs in the first round? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet healthcare, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all of your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth vet visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. AutoShip is a game changer, and you can set up automatic deliveries for food, treats, or any essentials so you never run out. You can easily change or cancel it anytime. I never have to stress or worry about racing out to the store to get my lovable goofball Layla her food because Chewy makes sure that I get my auto ship on time every time. Chewy has everything that you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the show description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find the Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, I broke down kind of my top 5 fits for the Bucs that could realistically be there at 19 on yesterday's show. If you haven't heard that, go back, check it out. I address all 3 levels of the defense with different players, but I haven't gotten to talk to you, David, at all about the draft. We've chatted on Twitter about the more important things like Star Wars and wrestling, but we haven't talked about the draft. So Evan has been pounding the table for over a calendar year, 2 draft cycles to draft an edge rusher. But, with the Bucs at 19, they're kind of in an interesting spot where chances are there could be some elite players falling to them because of the position they play. So when you take a look at who could realistically be there at 19, who is the number 1 guy that you're thinking, yes, this guy is the perfect fit in Tampa?
If the Bucs are on the clock and Jihad Campbell is on the board, I will be shocked if they don't take him. I will be genuinely shocked because linebacker, I know Levante David is one of the greatest linebackers in the history of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? Derek Brooks is, to me, number 1. Levante's right there, okay? Like 1A, 1B. I don't even want to call Levante number 2. But let's be real here. Servassier Dennis dealt with some injuries last year. What kind of shape will he be in? Is he a type of guy that can stay healthy? Is he going to be one of those guys where it's like all this potential, but just couldn't stay healthy? We don't know, but maybe that could be a thing. I know KJ Britt's no longer here, but you look at that, like that clearly was not working, especially in the passing game, right? So you need somebody who is a top level linebacker. And to me, that's Campbell. You get somebody young, Levante can teach him, right? Athleticism is truly on this young man's side. It really is. I like what he can do sideline to sideline. First of all, anybody that plays linebacker at Alabama, you got to give him a look. It's just, just off the strength of where he went to school. So I'm going to be shocked if they don't take him. The one name that I actually would be okay with, though, let's say they don't take him and they say, okay, we're not going to go with the Alabama guy, is if they go with the Georgia guy, right? They go with Williams. They say, actually, we're going to go with Williams. We want somebody who we think can get double-digit sacks, legitimately double-digit sacks. And the way that Todd Bowles likes to simulate pressure when he lines up his defense, that could open up rush lanes for the other guys. So as much as we like to talk about Michael Williams and how good he could be getting double-digit sacks, those simulated pressures from Todd Bowles could open things up for Yaya Diaby. It could open things up the middle as well for Kalijah Kancey. It could open things up for Anthony Nelson. You know what I mean? Like that. All of those things are possibilities when you have a true edge guy who is a threat. We saw it with Shaq Barrett when he was in his prime. You saw how other people were eating because he was going to eat. And people were worried about him. Like that's the one thing, like, okay, if you go get him and he's available, which I don't know if he will be. That's the one that's my kind of asterisk there. Will he be available? I don't know. But I think Campbell will. And I'll be shocked if the Bucs get on the clock and they say, we're good. We're going to go with somebody else. So if you're not going to get the Alabama guy, go get the Georgia guy.
Well, and you said Georgia guy, and I knew you were going to talk Georgia guys. But you said Georgia guy, and my brain immediately went, he's going to say Malachi Starks. Because that is the name that has been linked to the Bucs a lot recently. And I've been on the record of saying, I don't know if I love the idea of safety in round 1. But Malachi Starks is special. And I realize
Yeah.
that Nick Emenwari is flying up the draft boards because of his RAS score and all that. But Starks, to me, is the better player. He is the more complete package. But outside of Jihad Campbell and Michael Williams, who are a couple of other players that you think are home run picks for the Bucs at 19 based on what they need and what those prospects can do in this, probably in this Todd Bowles defense? You already said you don't think they're going offense in round one, but
No.
based on these prospects and what they can do and what Todd likes to do.
So I've got my notes here. If you'll allow me to cheat.
Oh, absolutely.
I hope it's not a test.
Evan cheats so much, it's not even funny.
If you'll allow me to cheat, I'm going to look at my notes. So if you're not going to get Michael Williams, so let's say, like, there's one mock that has him going to the Falcons. The Falcons don't draft Georgia guys. So stop. Right. So let's just get that out of the way. Okay. If you went to the University of Georgia, the Falcons are like, we don't care. So there's a chance he actually is available. But let's say you don't get him. Okay. Jalen Walker, I think, works. You need somebody who's an off-ball linebacker. This defense needs that. I think what really helps the Buccaneers is when they have a linebacker that they know can stop the run, and you have another guy that can cover. He's an off-ball linebacker. He knows how he can go catch people in space, right? So you have your field general, then you've got your athletic guy. We had that with you had Levante, so you had 54, and then you had 45. That's how I always put it, right? You had White, and then you had Levante. So you got your athletic guy. He can blitz. He can just play. He's athletic. He can play. But you got your field general. Well, they don't have that outside of Levante. And as much as I love him, Levante could drop off that cliff. He could do this any day. Don't want him to, but he could. So you do need somebody who can be an off-ball linebacker. I think Jalen Walker is that guy. Here's a little curveball here, because yes, I do like Starks, obviously as a Georgia fan, but I'm not really looking at him in terms of secondary picks. I'm actually looking at Jahdae Barron, if I said that right, out of Texas. Yep. I'm looking at him. There's two reasons why. The first reason, I'm going to cheat. If Evan cheats, I'm going to cheat. The first reason is this guy is smart.
Mm-hmm.
The Todd Bowles defense is complicated. Every time I talk to a DB, past or present, doesn't matter. Like, I remember talking to Mike Edwards in the locker room, and I asked him, like, what was it like going to these other teams and then come back to the Bucs? And he's like, well, defenses, and Jordan Whitehead said the same thing. Defenses everywhere else are very simple after playing in a Todd Bowles defense. A Todd Bowles defense is so complex that when you go anywhere else and all you hear is under cover 3, you're like, thank goodness. Okay. A Todd Bowles defense is complex. You need somebody who is smart. Barron is smart. He's a really smart guy. I don't see any glaring weaknesses from him either. So when I look at his ability, I say, look, I think he's solid. I think you put him in a defense that has shown that they can really develop secondary talent. I look at the growth of McCollum. He's grown so much in this system. I love, obviously, Tyke Smith. He was like that at Georgia, but he's still, like, you can see the growth there with him. I like what Todd Bowles and his staff are able to do with young defensive backs. And I think he would be a huge advantage, or just he would bring so much to that defense, so much to that secondary. And that's not a slight to anybody that's on that secondary right now. But let's be real. Jamel Dean is already on the injury list to miss about 4 games. And it is April.
100%.
He's going to miss like 4 games. So you need somebody. And, hey, let's be real here. When Jamel was out, what did defenses do? Well, let's go target the guy who's in his place.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just go after that guy. You know why? Because we know they ain't that good. They're not.
And it's funny you bring up Barron, because I brought him up on my best fits on yesterday's show, and I said normally I would discount him right off the bat because of his size. I
Yeah.
said Barron is the extent. Todd Bowles likes these corners that are over 6 feet tall. He likes the bigger ones, the longer ones. Barron's the exception. He is so incredibly talented and as you mentioned, so incredibly intelligent that he's the exception, not the rule, if he happens to be there at 19. So we're kind of along the same lines here in our thinking of the draft. But the Bucs cleared up a lot of cap space last week. What are Jason Licht and Todd Bowles up to? That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Right now, the Oklahoma City Thunder are the favorites to win the NBA Finals at plus 170, followed by the defending champion Boston Celtics at plus 185, then the Cleveland Cavaliers at plus 500, and the Los Angeles Lakers at plus 1,700. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com to claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. And last week, in a span of about 24 hours, the Bucs restructured Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Antoine Winfield Jr.'s contracts and freed up a ton of cap space. They are now sitting with just over $32 million in cap space, according to Spot Track, which is the 11th most in the league. Now, this is something, David, that I was expecting them to do prior to the start of free agency. We're now 2 weeks out from the draft, and let's be honest, they do not need $32 million to sign their draft class. So do you think that the Bucs are gearing up for a big move, potentially a draft weekend trade if some things don't shake out quite the way that they're hoping? Or is this just something that the Bucs are doing because they can, knowing that it's just going to carry over to next year if they don't end up using it this season?
I think it's a bit of both.
Okay.
Because we know Jason Licht, and he's going to look at all of his options. He's going to look at his options. He's going to consider everything that's on the table. And if there is a deal that's good enough, he might pull the trigger. But at the same time, you know that money's going to carry over. If Baker balls out and continues to play at the way that he's been playing, going to Pro Bowls consistently, well, you're going to have to give him a new deal. Like you're just going to have to pay him again. And you're going to need some of that money to do so. And you're also going to need to have enough money to continue to build a team around him, because Baker has been great. But Baker really has been able to succeed because of the pieces around him, the offensive line that's been in front of him, and the guys he's been able to hand the ball off to, basically Bucky Irving, So you want to be able to surround your quarterback with talent, but you got to pay your quarterback. If he continues on this pace, you're going to have to pay that guy a chunk of change. Now, you've already paid him that, technically speaking, but that might be what they're doing. But if there is something out there, because I'm trying to think, like I've been sitting here thinking of like what free agent is still available that you would really drop a bag on,
Right.
like who's out there that you would even drop a bag on? Like, why would you save all this money now? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I think right now, if someone said, hey, you got to pick a side, I think I'm on the side of we're saving it for next year, because you never know, who might need a new deal, who might have earned an extension. You really don't know. So you want to have money to do that. But if something does arise, if there's a team on draft night that's like, hey, I've got a deal that'll blow your mind, Jason's going to listen. And if he likes what he hears, he's like, hey, I got the money to do it, so let's do it. But it's gotta make a ton of sense, though.
Yeah, and that was kind of what came to my mind as well. Like who's still out there in free agency, and I wrote down some of the top names. You got Keenan Allen and Tyler Lockett. They're out there in case the Bucs don't, end up drafting a receiver. You can get a veteran presence. You can get a compliment to the wide receiver room. But outside of that, Justin Simmons. He's a player that I've talked about a lot on this show that I think could be a great fit. Matt Judon. Stephon Gilmore, James Bradbury, Von Miller, Marcus Williams, Rasul Douglas, I think is probably like the best player available in terms of, not quite hitting the back nine of his career. So he's still floating out there, but yet none of these guys are going to cost 15, $20 million.
No.
So why do you need to clear all that space outside of you're trading for Trey Hendrickson? Like that was what was kind of floating around out there. Like even David Harrison of Locked On Commanders, he texted out to his insiders. He goes, the Bucs have just cleared a ton of cap space. I'm not saying that they're trading for Trey Hendrickson, but I'm also not saying that they're trading for Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, I mean, look, every name you just brought up, all those free agent names are just that. They're names. They're great names. And people's like, oh, yeah. Like, I remember that. Yeah, he used to be great. Yeah, like, come on. Like, you might as well, if you're going to go out and grab people off the strength of their names, then go ahead and, try to find any guy that had one great year or a few great years, a handful of great years, but they're not worth a bag. You know what I mean? They're worth a 1-year deal. Hey, come in, come help us out, see how it works. But kind of already did that with Riddick or Reddick, like you've already done that. So I agree with you. Like nobody's worth all this money right now in this current free agent market. So let it roll over. And I don't think there's a problem with that. Man, you already have a team. You already have a team whose short-term future is pretty secure because you've drafted well. You've drafted well. You have found the right guys. They're all contributing. Your 2024 rookie class was amazing. All things considered, they were amazing. So you are playing with house money you have built from within. And I think that's going to attract free agents next year when, we start this whole cycle over. And then you're like, okay, now who's available? Who is available going into the 2026 season? That's when you go strike that deal and you say, okay. And if, Baker's up for another extension, you say, all right, Baker, we got the money. So you let us know what you need. We'll do it. We're going to build a team around you. I have no issues with that strategy if that's what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, taking a look at the 2026 roster, again through Spot Track, without any rollover, they're projected to have nearly $80 million in cap space.
Come on now.
And you would have Baker entering a contract year. Vita Vea is in a contract year. Jamel Dean, if he's on the roster or not, he's in a contract year. Mike Evans is in a contract year this year. Chase McLaughlin is in a contract year. Cody Mauch, Yaya Diaby, Servassier Dennis, Payne Durham. There are some heavy hitters that would be entering contract years where this $32 million now rolls over pretty nicely for all of these extensions because you've been hitting on all your draft classes.
Exactly. So that's why drafting is so important. People fall in love with the Madden strategy too much, which is take all that cap space and grab every big name ever. I did that when I was young, man. I remember taking my favorite team. Man, I would go get Larry Fitzgerald and Chris Johnson and Troy Polamalu and put them all on the same team. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how you would do things, kind of like trying to build this ultimate team. That's not real life.
Right.
You've got to draft well. You've got to build from within. And Jason Licht and his staff have done that. I am very envious that Spytek went over to the Raiders because, man, that would have been great to have him still be in Tampa Bay because that guy was such an asset in that front office. But all credit to the Raiders because, I mean, hey, if all that works out, the Raiders can call themselves contenders in a few years. Anybody that comes from the Jason Licht office, I would say that. So, I love the way that this team drafts. We've been talking about pick number 19. Whoever they pick, even if it's not a guy that we're thinking of, we know that they have done their research. They've done their homework. And that's a guy that's probably going to contribute almost immediately. I mean, you're just talking about very recently, Graham Barton, Kalijah Cansey. I know there's been some injury issues with Cansey, but you look at the way that he's contributed when he is healthy, that is a baller. That guy is a baller. Graham Barton deserves so much credit. I think he's the unsung hero because he switched positions on the offensive line going into the pros. So yeah, man, you got to be able to sign these rookies or these guys on these rookie deals to newer deals when the time comes, and that's part of the league. That's how it goes. That's just the way it goes. So shout out to Jason Light and everything that they do in that front office, because it is awesome, especially as an Atlanta fan watching just buffoonery. Like just sit and watch buffoonery. You really look at what's going well with other teams, and you're like, man, that must be a joy.
Yeah, it's funny because I had Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons on last
Oh
week,
man.
and he was sharing some of the same sentiments, especially when it comes to the Falcons not drafting players from the University of Georgia. So I did have to laugh when you brought that up. But David, appreciate you so much. Let everybody know what's going on over there at 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app, since you have to do your job and Evan's job since he's off lollygagging in the world of things that try to kill you there in Australia.
Yeah, man. By the time you guys are listening or watching this, Evan has been in Australia for a week. He's going to remain there for, I think, another 2 weeks. So it's just me. If you're a wrestling fan, just me, Oos. So, I'm holding it down the best I can. Look, Evan works so hard. I think he's the hardest working man in this market. I'm going to tell you something about me. I will never, ever in my life work that hard. Okay, I don't know how he balances it. I don't know how he does it. This man is in this office so much, but somehow is still in the gym. He's eating healthy. He's taking care of his stuff. I don't know how he does it. I really don't. Much love to EC. That's my guy. He's been my Obi-Wan, which would make me Anakin. I don't plan on turning evil anytime soon, but it's been awesome to be under his wing. Hey, what we've got going on here, look, the draft is coming up. Obviously, we've been talking about it, but so are the Lightning being in the playoffs, and that is going to be big time. This team is good. This Lightning team is really good. There's not too many teams in the Eastern Conference that I can see beating Tampa Bay 4 times. So this could be one of those lengthy runs. Could it end up with a Stanley Cup appearance? I don't know. But I don't rule it out, because once you get to the playoffs, it's a brand new season. Anything can happen. It is a brand new season. So, Lightning, we've got that going on. Shout out to the Tampa Bay Rowdies. They will be back in Ao Lang Stadium for the first time this season, coming up on Saturday. So I want to show them some love too. If you want to follow all that coverage, my @name's down there. That is my @name on X, as well as Instagram @Deacon_Sheely. Also, I've got a faith-based podcast called Game Day Grace. We have had former Bucs punter Jay Camarda on there. We had Bucs VP of Player Engagement Duke Preston. Future guests include Larry Foote, possibly former head coach Tony Dungy. So we're doing our thing over there. We're basically it's just faith and sports unite in powerful conversations. That's what we always say. Just kind of getting way deeper than the stats, way deeper than the scores. We're getting to really the heart of these players and these coaches and these executives and these broadcasters as they share their testimonies. I mean, some of these guys have been through so much, and yet we see them with their heads held high, and you wonder why. And that's really what that podcast dives into. So that is Game Day Grace. You can find that on YouTube. And then always 10tampabay.com. We're on YouTube as well. Make sure you tuned into the Blitz this fall. The Blitz is that's our bread and butter right there, where we go all Bucs for like 10 to 12 minutes, and then I get roasted for being a Falcons fan, and we all laugh. And then when the camera turns off, I'm secretly upset. But man, we're just having fun here, man. We are having a ton of fun.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that, Evan's the Obi-Wan to your Anakin, and you didn't plan on turning to the dark side. And I thought, I don't know, some Bucs fans might say he's a Falcon fan. He's already turned to the dark side. But don't worry, you can always have that redemption arc and come back.
You never know.
But
Look, if Michael Penix throws for 5,000 yards, deuces. Okay, dark side. Because his rookie card's on my desk right now. Okay, I actually told his parents before he was in the national championship game that I thought he was going to the Falcons. Okay, I was in that man's house talking to his parents saying, hey, I think he's going to the Falcons. He's a future Falcons quarterback. And I got that whole moment on camera. If that young brother throws for 5,000 yards, I will be on the dark side. I'm apologizing for it now.
What if it's like a Jameis 5,000 yards, but 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions kind of season?
Okay, that's different. That's that's different. But the thing about Mike though is like his interceptions from, he didn't start for a long time, but like I don't think there was a single interception that was his fault from his few starts. Like I don't remember an interception being like, why did you throw that? Matt Ryan made me say, what are you looking at, a handful of times? Like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Michael didn't have that. Like Michael's first interception, it hit Kyle Pitts squarely in the hands, and for some reason Kyle, like a volleyball, just lifted it up and it was picked off. But man, you know what sold me was that throw against Washington on 4th down to Kyle Pitts to send it into overtime. I was like, I'm in. I mean, because I was out. I was out for a while. That pass brought me back in. So yeah, man, I'm maybe there is a little bit of dark side, sitting there, but it's gonna take a lot.
It's brewing. It's brewing. We see it bubbling up underneath. All right. Well, David, thank you so much. And of course, everybody check out everything that he's doing over on 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. Make sure that you're following everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at Deacon_Sheely. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. And of course, make sure that you are following along on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.